So happy to be here. Thank you for not reading all of my bio. Don't really like to hear about myself while I'm sitting here. That's kind of weird, but lots of good stuff to talk about today. The future of accessibility powered by AI. So today's agenda, Karen? Is it captioning okay? Is it 6:30? Yep, 6:31. We're good. We're good. All right. So want to discuss today a couple things. One, talk about some trends that point to the need for innovation. I want to talk about the AI for Accessibility Grant Program, so I'm really excited to share that. And just listening to a few of you all and what you do, I think you'll all find it very interesting. And then we'll end with some ideation time. And I'll be honest, I'm here to share what I think is really good stuff, and I'm hoping to take back to Seattle with me some really good stuff from you all. It's a meetup, and I think the best part about a meetup is hearing from you and taking back ideas. So we'll have a little bit of ideation time and then some Q&A at the end. All right, so on this slide here, I've got a picture of me and my father in the beautiful Chicago cold winter weather. This was last November, where I had a story published on about me and my family and growing up. And so I like to say that I pretty much was born to be an ally. As part of my larger bio, it reads that I'm a CODA, child of deaf adults. So I've been fluent in American Sign Language since I was 6 months old. And so this picture here is my dad and I taking a nice cold brisk walk. My dad, who's deaf, and this article was entitled Lessons from the South Side, the Dad Who Helped Raise an Empathetic Engineer. And you can find that article online, just bing it. But it really talks about how I just fell in love with technology and all of the assistive tech that was in my house growing up. And I didn't know necessarily that that meant becoming an engineer. I just knew that I wanted to be part of technology that helped my family. And so that has led to a career that has been in accessibility tech the entire way through. So I've been in tech and accessibility tech for over 13 years now. Started out focused on developing accessible solutions for mobile devices right here in Chicago, where I am from. I worked at Motorola for a decade and helped lead our product development there, working with lots of engineers and lawyers, pretty much everyone. At the end, I was the only one in the company working on accessibility, which is a positive thing because you make a lot of friends from marketing to legal. But at the same time, I wanted to grow and stretch a little bit. And I had heard from some industry colleagues all the great things that Microsoft was kind of starting up again and a new wave of their focus on accessibility. And so I relocated along with my family all the way to Redmond, right outside of Seattle, Washington. And once there, I focused more on web accessibility. So kind of went more behind the scenes and talking and working to make all of our internal and external Microsoft websites accessible, but particularly for our employees with disabilities. I love, love, love that we are really about empowering every single person on the planet to do more. That's the mission of Microsoft. And that really does start with the people that are developing the products that we make and sell. And so it was pretty rewarding. Also lots of work. When you think about it, you and I that can see, we're pretty much don't have a problem able to download our paycheck stub and what have you, some very regular things on our HR website. But the fact that, you know, your colleague who might be blind or have low vision has trouble doing that is not something that should be. So I definitely want to encourage everybody that there are lots of small steps that you can take to be an accessibility ally and champion. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be technical, but just figuring out ways that can improve the user experience for everybody. And so then now this latest role is in AI. So kind of journeyed from mobile to web and now AI, which I'm super excited about because I feel like AI is the new frontier, especially AI and accessibility, right? For me, hey, this is the opportunity for us all to make sure that the future is accessible by being part of this big wave of all the creative things that are being taken up. So I'm a techie. I love, love, love talking about innovation. And I love that I'm amongst my people here, people that are really thinking about the why and thinking about the how and kind of looking at it from end to end. And so what I have on this slide is just talking about the cycle of innovation, how many times it begins with a human need, right? And then you take some technology advancements and then you make progress. And that continues to push itself in this ever-evolving circle. And so sounds pretty simple, right, for a chart. This is how technology is, or innovation is done, right? But particularly for people with disabilities, we know that progress has been stagnant. But we also know with all the advances in technology, there's great opportunity. And so that's really what I want to talk about tonight. So for today, I'm going to talk a lot about the why, because I think that when people understand why there's a need for something, it'll be much, much easier to kind of get everybody on one accord, and I think that we'll all go much faster. So in talking about that, one part of that innovation cycle is talking about human need. We all know the statistic, more than 1 billion people have disabilities in this world today. And many of them lack access to 3 things: access to assistive technology. Only 1 in 10 people have access to the assistive technology that they need. And in other majority countries or developing countries, that stat and that disparity is even higher. Something to think about. Then there's also lack to education. Talking about here that 20% of adults with disabilities have less than a 9th grade education compared to only 8% of adults without a disability. So we're thinking a lot about how to close these gaps. And then employment. I'm sure that many of you all know the unemployment statistic for people living with a disability, which is twice that than a person living without a disability. But did you know that it can be upwards of 80% for people with autism? Again, something to think about, something that drives the need for innovation. And there's a trend here. Disability is something that affects all of us. So talking about AI, I'm really curious to figure out like where we are in the audience. How many of you kind of already feel like you know a lot about AI? Could you raise your hand? You feel like you could teach a course on it? Okay, I saw 3 hands and then I saw half a hand. Somebody like put their hand down. I saw it really, really fast. Okay, no worries. Another question, I'm wrapping up this week at the Disability In conference. Did any of you attend that conference this week? Okay, I see about 2 hands. Okay, pretty awesome conference. All right, well, we talked a little bit about the human need, particularly for people with disabilities. Wanted to talk just really briefly. Don't worry, I'm not going to go too much into the nuts and bolts of AI. There is a lot to pack in here, but like I said at the beginning, I wanted to hear from you all. But just at a very basic level, there's been so much going on that I doubt that there are very few people that haven't heard about the word AI, right? It's certainly a buzzword. And certainly the AI is technology that can perceive, learn, and reason, and that's what makes it so cool. Typically, we teach machines what to do. And so the thought that these machines could learn on their own is certainly a really cool concept. And in the largest sense of the word, we're seeing a lot of cool applications, particularly of machine learning which is a little bit different, but just speaks to the fact that there's so much data available, whether that's through your local government or whether that's Google or any other tech company collecting data on the accounts that you use. So much data that can be used to fuel innovation of new and creative solutions. So in talking about some of the AI advancements, just wanted to briefly touch on the fact of, okay, AI really isn't this new thing, but it's the fact of the rate at which it's advancing that has really made it such a mainstream topic today. And what you see here are some stats that talk about just the breakthroughs in object recognition, speech recognition, and language understanding over the past 3 years, and how we're finally getting to a point where we're sort of becoming on parity with a human. A couple years ago, if you've listened to any of the earlier demos of just like bots and assistants, you could definitely tell the difference between a machine and a human. But nowadays, not so much anymore. There are still some giveaways, but not so much anymore. And particularly not when interacting with your favorite voice assistant, Siri or Alexa, or maybe even Cortana. So then that led to some progress, right? And so was just talking with the gentleman here earlier about Seeing AI. How many of you have heard of the Microsoft Seeing AI app? Okay, more hands. Thank you so much, people. I really, really appreciate it. So this is a really cool app. I'm really proud of the fact that it was born out of just some engineers at Microsoft hacking. Not on their free time during a company hackathon, but that's a big part of our culture. And again, just speaks to the whole design thinking process and how we really can use technology to come up with anything. And so the Seeing AI app is a mobile app that's available on iPhone. If you haven't tinkered around with it, it's free. I highly recommend for you iPhone users that you download it after this session and tinker with it. But it helps my colleagues who are blind at work and in their daily life just pretty much turn a visual world into an audible experience. And it has features such as recognizing handwriting, which is really cool. When a teammate of mine, Anne, wants to read personal notes from her husband, she doesn't have to ask someone else to read it for her. And then there's also a currency channel and some other object recognition. And so I've got a really quick video here. Let's see. It was playing a second ago. It's loading.
Seeing AI is a Microsoft research project for people with visual impairments. The app narrates the world around you by turning the visual world into an audible experience. Point your phone's camera, select a channel, and hear a description. The app recognizes saved friends. Jenny near top right, 3 feet away, describes the people around you, including their emotions. 28-year-old female wearing glasses, looking happy. It reads text out loud.
Let's try this again.
Seeing AI is a Microsoft research project for people with visual impairments. The app narrates the world around you by turning the visual world into an audible experience. Your phone's camera, select a channel, and hear a description. The app recognizes saved friends. Jenny near top right, 3 feet away, describes the people around you, including their emotions. 28-year-old female wearing glasses, looking happy. It reads text out loud as it comes into view, like on an envelope, field, or a room entrance. Conference 2005. Or scan and read documents like books and letters. The app will guide you and recognize the text with its format. Top and left edge is not visible. Close stayed. Disagreement. When paying with cash, the app identifies currency bill, 20 US dollars. When looking for something in your pantry or at the store, use the barcode scanner with audio cues to help you find what you want. Campbell's tomato soup, when available, hear additional product details. Even microwave and even hear descriptions of images in other apps like Twitter by importing them into Seeing AI. Close up of Bill Gates. Finally, explore Robotics and mental features like scene descriptions to get a glimpse of the future. I think it's a young girl throwing a frisbee in the park. Experience the world around you with the Seeing AI app from Microsoft.
All right, taking a second to get back to presenting mode. But yeah, really cool app. I love that everywhere I go, people are telling me how they use the app, which I think is a really important thing. One of the features on there that I really like is with the barcode scanner, it actually provides audible cues when you're getting close to the barcode, which is really important, right? Just because you have that feature and you have a barcode, how does a person who is blind actually know how to position the camera? Those little details matter in terms of user experience. All right, come on. It's thinking way too much. All right, let me kill PowerPoint. So while I'm doing this, that's just one example that has been really cool to implement using some pre-built Azure services called cognitive services. What I wanted to talk about next was how many of you all use the subtitles and the captioning within PowerPoint during a presentation? Okay, see 2, 5 hands, maybe 6. I highly recommend that you turn it on because it's definitely improving a lot. It's not on par with having a live person captioning yet. That's still something that we recommend for events, but could be really useful in meetings. Yes, I see a hand.
Yeah. Does it kind of transcribe everything out of it now? Or
Not yet, but that is a really good proposal that I'll talk about. Yeah. All right, let's get back into this. And really simple to enable. You just go to the slideshow ribbon and then you can kind of select an option to make that on always. Other advances, just during video, we have Microsoft Stream, which will provide automatic transcripts. And we use this for a lot of our town hall streaming videos, which is really cool. I like it because I don't have to remember everything that was said. I'm an audio and visual learner. Again, an accessibility feature that benefits a lot of other people as well. And then there's learning tools, which is another hack that came out of Microsoft from some employees. And this particular solution helps students with dyslexia. I really like it because it has some really important features. Just in terms of plain language, it provides suggestions. It also breaks up some of the words into syllables as students are following along. But again, in terms of providing access, this feature being used in millions of classrooms has led to increased test scores by at least 10 points. Really important in terms of results. And now I want to bring up my special friend, Adam Heckman, from our Chicago office here in Philanthropies, just to talk about okay, those are some of the things that Microsoft is focused on at a product level, but let's bring it a little bit more local. Let's talk about the partnerships that Microsoft has with Chicago. Gotta put this on too.
Okay.
Can I touch you?
You may.
Okay.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Heather, and welcome home. Appreciate having you here. My name is Adam Heckman. I am with Microsoft. I'm in the Chicago office. We have been doing a lot of different things in Chicago, specifically in the accessibility and inclusion space. I think if there was one interesting thing that I'd like to talk about, it's this one over here, G3ICT in the city of Chicago for Smart City Digital Inclusion. I think some of you will recognize some of the people in this picture here, Pat Maher, Danielle Demir, and that's Karen Tamley, who a lot of people know as the Commissioner for the Mayor's Office with People with Disabilities. So what this project does is, if you think about cities today, every city is trying to become a smart city, right? And they're also trying to become digital smart cities, which means that they're trying to move more and more of their services to be digital. So what this does is this makes sure that as cities are moving to become digital smart cities, they are inclusively digital smart cities. What it boils down to is we're working with G3ICT to build a digital inclusion maturity model so that cities can, first of all, benchmark where they are in terms of digital inclusion on the maturity model and get specific advice as to how to move up the levels of the maturity model. So Karen was great about offering up not only her staff, but staff in all of the different departments in the city to be interviewed, to be benchmarked. We were doing this simultaneously in Chicago and in New York with the hopes that when we're finished with this, this will be a great tool that any city of any size can use to make sure that they're bringing everybody along as they become digital.
Thanks, Adam. I just love him so much. We have some amazing teammates and just lots of folks working on accessibility, which is really cool. The other picture on this slide is a screenshot from a blog article from the University of Illinois, where I went to school, and it is talking about the Accessibility Lighthouse program. Don't know if you all have heard about it, but it was announced late last year. And there's this partnership with Microsoft and UIUC to make classrooms more accessible by just bringing in some of the live captioning, as well as setting up some of the software in the room so that all students can get what they need. And so there will be more coming out of that. But I don't know, how many people went to U of I here? Okay, 3. Okay, not a lot of people.
And we have U of I right here, UIC.
Oh, UIC. Okay, cool. Yeah. I just remember for me, when I was going to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, it definitely wasn't the easiest thing trying to navigate some of the accommodations and accessibility services. And so to see a more concerted effort in terms of trying to make UIUC one of the most accessible universities in the country is really refreshing and sort of about time as well. So I've already talked about, okay, a few of the things that Microsoft is doing in terms of products. And now I get to talk a little bit more about this grant program. And a lot of that is behind the mission of Microsoft, which I've already stated is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And as part of that, we are leading in a lot of ways. And perhaps you'll notice that Microsoft is really big on privacy and security, and that doesn't stop when it comes to when you compare the different cloud technology providers. And this slide here just talks a little bit behind the bigger picture with AI. So you have a lot of these really cool solutions, right? But the other side of that coin is that lots of people talk about, well, you know, how should AI be used? Will it take away jobs of captioners, for instance, by having more of this embedded into, you know, PowerPoint and other tools? And so there are lots of components to think through when creating any type of solution with AI. And these are just a couple of the categories that need to be top of mind, at least as far as what Microsoft's put forth. And that's fairness, reliability, privacy, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. This could be a slide in itself, but just know that particularly in AI for accessibility, we're really driving home the inclusive part. We really want Azure, Microsoft's AI platform, to be the most inclusive platform there is. And that's why we started really thinking. We thought about the question, how do we want the world to look in 5 years? Microsoft is leading on a lot of different fronts. And it would be nice to just say, hey, we're incorporating AI into our products. That's good enough. But it really is more than that. And it's time to actually dream again. That's the point of technology breakthroughs, is to really push the limits of what's possible. And I love the field of accessibility for doing that, because whenever we come up with this technology, accessibility just opens up doors for new use cases that we haven't necessarily considered or weren't even thought of when that technology was developed. So how do we want the world to look? I want to make sure my captions are on this time. And I'm going to play a video that talks about one of the problems that we were really excited to solve using AI.
Browse at a bookshop. When I was a kid, I was amazed by the biology. I didn't want to be. I wanted to finish. A codex page. It's at school. Dr. Ayana Howe.
Reading science, technology, engineering, math can open up a whole new world. At Robotics, we are using Microsoft AI to develop a STEM-based reading fluency. What's unique about reading stories? There is a customization, understanding children's voices, all of the nuances of research. The AI agent acts based on the interaction of the child and understands how they can and when they need to improve. For a kid without access to speech therapists or the funds to pay for them, this is life.
Outside the school.
Partnership with Microsoft AI for Good allows us to quickly iterate and enable deploying AI technology into real life. Learning is not a one-size-fits-all problem. When you make it accessible and inclusive to kids with diverse learning needs, you make it accessible and inclusive for every child. We make sure that every child has access to education.
We love reading. AI. Like this one.
Cool. So that was Robotics, and it's a startup in Atlanta, Georgia, that is using some of our cognitive services, particularly custom speech, to create a STEM-based reading fluency app for students that have speech disabilities. And what I love about that particular product and what they're shooting for is they're looking at the fact that it can be pretty expensive to have an occupational or speech therapist. And particularly in areas where there are students of color or other areas where they have a lower socioeconomic status. How do we scale the need for therapists with all of these students? And so they're using AI to be able to provide feedback to a student when they're reading in order to highlight exactly what part they're struggling with, what part they missed. And then that sort of feeds into a dashboard that the teacher as well as the parents can track together and talk about how exactly the child is progressing in their fluency. All right. So in thinking about how we want the world to look in 5 years, Microsoft came up with this AI for Good, this umbrella of programs that includes AI for Earth, AI for accessibility, and AI for humanitarian action. And they're all focused on how to create a better world, leveraging the most recent advances in technology. In particular, today I wanted to focus on AI for accessibility. That's the program that I'm a part of. And with the AI for Accessibility program, we are here to empower startups, researchers, entrepreneurs, NGOs, literally anybody that has an idea or wants to create a solution to empower people with disabilities in one of our focus areas of employment, daily life, communication, and connection. How we're going to do this and how we've started to do this is Microsoft has invested $25 million over the next 5 years in this program and engineering resources in terms of providing technology grants, providing some of the knowledge and expertise of Microsoft engineers to help build these solutions, and then just using the very big and vast Microsoft network to scale. Which is absolutely amazing. So yeah, I kind of showed you really briefly about some of the things that we're building, and there's a lot more, particularly in the accessibility space. But we really think that having people with disabilities and having people and startups that are rooted in the disability community, willing to work with people with disabilities to design solutions with and by, that will be the next breakthrough in terms of progress. Particularly for me, I don't know about you all, but having done this for over 10 years, I'm really tired of talking about the unemployment rate. Like, it has been the same number for a very long time. And this is an opportunity to use technology to accelerate that. So that's why I'm super, super excited to hear more from you all later on, and really think about what are some of the solutions, and perhaps there are people in this room that might apply for a grant. So there are 2 types of grants. There's one that's the fast track, Azure credits only. So using our cloud platform, and I can talk a little bit more about this later as well, but using our cloud platform, you pretty much know what you want to do, you know how much you need, and this is just the compute power to get it done. We have Azure credits only grants, and then we've got another type of grant, which is a combination of Azure credits plus some cash. And that cash goes towards a data scientist, perhaps to collect data, or something related to the engineering related work that is needed to build your solution or your idea. How do we evaluate grants? Well, a major tenet is that it has to be developed with or by people with disabilities. If you are not necessarily technically savvy, then we encourage you to match up with someone that is. Perhaps you are technically savvy. We encourage you to match up with the disability community to make sure that what you are designing for actually meets a need. There are other criteria that I have listed on this slide. I just have it on here because lots of people ask. They're like, okay, Microsoft is giving away money. That's really nice. It must be really, really hard. And it's like, I'm telling you, every single thing that we evaluate on. As part of leading business operations, my team, we look at all of the applications. We have a board. And so we really do read every single one. But other criteria include relevance. Believe it or not, it is the AI for Accessibility grant program, so it needs to have AI in it, people. I know that's really, really basic, but I have to say that because, yes, there are lots of ideas out there, and some of them don't need AI to get implemented. But that is what we are after. We are really wanting to prove what can be accelerated through the use of AI technology. And then impact. The three focus areas are employment, daily life, communication, and connection. How are you going to empower people with disabilities in one of those focus areas? Data, 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 data. Machine learning requires lots of data. And the truth is, particularly in the disability community, there just isn't a lot of it. You know, I tell people that it's really easy for me to have lots and lots of pictures of a plant, for instance. It can take a lot longer for me to sit down with an individual that has a speech disability and record some speech data. Two different things. And again, we are looking for more and more data in order to be this innovative platform that others can build off of. And so not only are we looking for folks to bring forth the data, but we're looking for them to be collaborative. Like, don't just hog it to yourselves. You need to share it. That's how we're gonna all go further together, as the African proverb says. Then feasible and sustainable. Each grant is for 1 year. It is possible to renew the grant. There is a whole review process for that. But what can you accomplish in 1 year? What will you have to show at the end of that year? And will your idea live beyond that year? And then capable and showcaseable. Capable, do you have the skill set on your team, or do you need to kind of pair up with someone else? I feel like you guys are super quiet. I hope that you're like taking this in and kind of thinking of an idea, because again, this program is open to normally when I say $25 million in a room, there's a lot more excited people. I don't know if you ate too much, or it's the evening, or the heat. One of those three things, right? Okay. All right, I gotta remember where I'm at. That's all right, that's okay. So I just wanted to talk about a few example projects, which is really cool that I'm getting to talk with you all about it. It's taken some time for us to be able to talk about it. But one project is from Vanderbilt University, and it's at their Frisk Center for Autism, which is this big network with businesses and young adults with autism, as well as the university. And so their solution in their project is to build a virtual interviewer that would help in preparing for job interviews by providing a mock job interview scenario. And with this virtual interviewer, the interviewer would be able to adjust their questioning based on if the applicant with autism is perceived to be having a difficult time, not making eye contact, being able to provide some of that real-time feedback in order to help that individual prepare to interview for a job well. So that's taking in all of these different sensors and data from the actual person with an autism while interviewing. And what I love about it is it's not saying, hey, you should adjust. No, interviewer, you adjust. You adjust to the person that you are interviewing. So really cool about that. Then there's, and that one from the Vanderbilt University is, since that job interviewing, that is employment. But the next one is a feature project in daily life from Massachusetts Eye and Ear. They're also associated with the Harvard Medical School, and they are solving what we like to call in the industry the last 30 feet problem. So yes, you have this smartphone app that can tell you, that can recognize objects. However, you need to get on a bus and you are blind and you thought that the bus stop was right in front of you, but that happened to be a bench. And the actual bus stop is a couple more feet away. And you missed your bus by a couple feet, literally. And so they are using computer vision in order to help people who are blind with navigation. And particularly, they are looking at being able to navigate to bus stop signs in about 12 cities globally. Really cool stuff. So each of our grantees are using a different number of combinations when it comes to the technology, the Azure technology that they're using. Some are just using the pre-built cognitive services, which could be image recognition, which could just be plug and play speech recognition, and they are adding it to an existing app or product and then kind of running with that. So not a lot of work, extra work needed. Azure has done a lot of the work for you, which I would encourage you all, and I'm going to have it towards the end. There's a link, but you can set up a free Azure account today and just tinker with some of the cognitive services there are and some of the demos that we have online. Lots and lots to play with. And then some are using our machine learning studio. So some are using the custom Azure machine learning, and some have their own machine learning algorithms. There's like lots of different flavors when it comes to your expertise with machine learning, and particularly how much you want to fine tune the algorithms, how much data you have, how you've structured your data. We could talk a lot about that, but I just wanted to give you a flavor for that. And then we have some really cool products as part of the Azure suite. We have some grantees that are working on chatbots. I know I was talking with someone in here about bots earlier, and those you could plug and play as well as with the natural language processing. I'm gonna pause here and just make sure everybody is still with me. Does anybody have any questions or something in particular you want me to cover when we're talking about the AI itself? Question over here.
These products, are they accessible by screen readers?
Great question. The question on the floor was, are these products accessible by screen reader users? Very good question. So most of the cognitive services are. The machine learning, there are some workarounds. And that's sort of the point of the program as well, is by having people with disabilities build on Azure, we're able to give the feedback back to the Azure team to make sure that it is the most inclusive platform. Question here.
Are these products accessible to people on Mac?
On MacBooks?
Yeah.
Yes, it's agnostic, every platform. Yeah, this is part. So you go to a lot of this, you can go to the Azure portal and consume the technology that way. Question here.
So if someone was a grant recipient, my understanding is that in a lot of the machine learning community, people use the TensorFlow API to build their applications. Would you be able to use your Azure credits to run a TensorFlow-based solution, or have to Microsoft's machine learning framework?
So the question for those on the call is, can you use TensorFlow for your machine learning solution, or do you have to use just Azure products? And the answer is yes, you can use TensorFlow. There's a lot of connectors between the different platforms, but Azure is open to TensorFlow as well as a few others as well. So yes is the short answer. Question in the back.
Have these products been like usability tested amongst like
So the question was, how have these products been user tested? So these that I'm showing right now on the screen are sort of the building blocks from Azure. But when it comes to the grantees themselves and the products that they are making with this technology, yes, we are very much encouraging them and connecting them to the disability community if they don't already have some connections for user testing. That is very much part of their 12-month timeline. And a question over here.
I have a question. Actual facts. I see obviously, work with universities and, not just like startups. My question is, are those just like a professor who doesn't do a lab, or do also feel like individual, like fellowship, as well as like these?
Great question. So the question was, he noticed that we give a lot of grants to universities, and do those grants, are they just for professors, or do we give them to fellow students or fellowships? And the answer is that anyone can apply and anyone can get a grant. What I will say is that given how universities kind of structure who can work on a project, typically there is a lead professor. That's just how the university does it. That's not necessarily a requirement from us. We've given out grants to individuals themselves, to students themselves. So literally, anybody who has an idea and the capability to implement it, we're open completely. Yes.
Are the grants that you give to universities, are they qualify to have the like exemption for the university taking money from the grant for their own purposes versus to the grant? Yeah, there we go.
Very, very good question. Overhead costs, which is what I deal with a lot in operations. So she asked, the grants that we give to universities, do they account for overhead costs? And so we take that by a case-by-case basis. We're able to have conversations. And so in some cases, yes, if we need to, we will account for that. We have, and there's an application process that I'll talk about too, really briefly, just give you the link. You can look it up yourself. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it to you. But that's where you would capture some of that information in terms of what budget you're asking for. But I also, again, the two slides before were just example highlighted projects. There are many others on the websites. And the video that I showed with Robotics, that was a startup. So not all universities, lots more to talk about, but those are just highlighted projects to give you a flavor for how they're implementing Azure. Question here.
Yep. So in exchange for the grant, does Microsoft get some ownership of the intellectual property or?
Ooh, you guys are asking like all the questions in my wheelhouse. Wait till I go back and tell my team. So the question is, in exchange for the grant, how does IP work? What does Microsoft get out of it? IP belongs to the grantee. Microsoft does not take the IP. If there was a special case where we entered into a special agreement or collaboration, then that is a separate contract. But the whole idea of the program is that we want to empower the community to build solutions by providing them the technology that could accelerate their ideas. But the IP stays with the grantee. Question here.
And to clarify my understanding, you can access these products without, or do you need a grant to be able to use that?
Ooh, do you need a grant to be able to use Azure? No, you do not. So there is the free account, like I said, to tinker with. But at a certain point, depending on how much of Azure you need, whether that's virtual machines or there's just lots of different stuff in storage that we could get into, it's pretty nice to have it paid for, right? So that is the point. So I never heard anybody turn down free money. Okay, question up front.
Maybe it was one of the requirements. The grants that are issued, is there a typical range in dollar amount that you typically award? And also, can the grants are they typically for nonprofits, or can the grant, whatever's created, ultimately result in something that is profitable?
Ooh, great question. See, you all were paying attention. You just were like giving me resting face. Man, you asked like all the right questions. So the question was, is there a range for the cash part of one of the grant options? And then also, do we give money to NGOs, organization, nonprofits? And so for your first question, the range is a funny one. We don't publish ranges because it really depends. If your idea is good enough, bring it. What I will say is that A lot of people hear $25 million and go, hey, I'll just ask for $2 million of that. And it's $25 million investment over 5 years, people. And it's just like Shark Tank, right? Like, you don't go on Shark Tank without having done your numbers. You will get eaten up. And so my advice to anybody putting together a proposal is that you just really have to document exactly how much you need and why. And particularly for Azure, to your question too, in the back, there's an Azure calculator, and you'll see that you don't need a lot of money for the Azure part. But engineering resource related things, you just might. Collecting data, we believe in paying participants, people with disabilities that you collect data from, and so part of the cash can be used for that. And in terms of nonprofits, yes, we do, again, give out money to any and everybody. Nonprofits are included. If you have the capability, sure, submit an application. If you don't have the technical capability, then just make sure that you kind of partner with someone else that does. Question in the back.
Yeah, this goes back to the question that you're testing for one of your products or maybe one of the earlier products that were shown. I think it was in regards to robotics, like how AI was used to like teach children, like I guess like learn, I guess like to learn like the different concepts better, such as mathematics and other sort of and other sort of subjects. What was the result of like testing like those amongst children? Were they, or was that product tested amongst like children in like different schools and everything? And if so, like what was the result? Did a majority of them turn out to enjoy the product a whole lot, or like were there like a different like reactions to it like amongst children?
So the question was about the Robotics project and asking just about results. How have the kids fared since the release of that product? So the quick answer is that they're still developing, they're still in development. It's sort of an iterative process. We just pretty much closed out our first year of operating the program. And so there are about 3 to 4 cycles of awards a year. And so they all have a year and kind of have different start points. So the short answer is they're still working on it, but that is part of our timeline and plan with them, is that we get really specific on metrics, because if you can't measure it, you didn't do it. And was that it? Okay, one question here, and then I'll keep going and you'll keep me on time. Here.
Two-part question. One, do the grant ideas have to be unique? Like if somebody else has already done that idea, like if the next people that apply are less likely to receive grant. Second part is, if there are grantees that need essentially the same data, is there a way do you coordinate so that data could be shared among different grantees so you're not paying to collect the same data?
Thank you. Excellent questions. So the first one is, if there's already something out there similar to your project proposal, will we fund it? Pretty much. And it does need to be unique. We want to have lots of proof points that we can make some serious progress with technology. And what I will say that I was going to get to later, and there'll be a link for, or here's the link here on our website, aka.ms/AI for accessibility. And you'll be able to see all the projects, not just the ones that I've highlighted today. And I really encourage that you all take a look at what we have funded. We'll even announce a few more at the end of this month, and see how your idea differs or is similar to them, and figure out what's the unique angle. Unless it's particularly in another region, we probably wouldn't fund the same thing. And I will say another region just because there can be some cultural differences or just some nuances with being in a different region, and this is a global program. The second question was on similar data. So if we've got different grantees collecting similar data, how do we facilitate that? Which is a great question, because when you go on our site, you will see that we have, they're spread out across all of the 6 disability segments that we cover. So neurodiversity, speech, mobility, hearing, and vision. And yeah, I think I had them all. Okay, and so we do, as part of the open data set part that I was talking about in terms of requirements, since we want everybody to be open, we do facilitate some of that data collecting if they are willing to share it back with Microsoft. Some folks are willing to just share it back to a different open data set, and that's fine if it's not with Microsoft. At the end of the day, as long as it's open so that someone else can build on top of it is what we care about. Okay, so one more question, then I need to move on.
I have a question about Phonia,
Mhm.
the program that you have for people with speech disabilities, so that their speech recognition better, or you're like creating something.
I think that's Google.
Is it?
Yeah, it's all right. They're competing. They've got a program too. We'll be talking more about ours on the website, but I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so yeah, these are the things that we've considered in terms of how we want the world to look in 5 years, the impact that we want to have in the disability community by making sure that we have people that are building with and by people with disabilities in each of them of the focus areas. Having that global influence, which we kind of touched on in the questions, which was great, and then that collaboration piece, which we also touched on. As part of sort of the little piece of ethics that I talked about at the beginning of just being inclusive in terms of AI and AI technology that's being built, I won't go into the examples. I'm pretty sure that you all are red people and you see that there is bias. There's bias in us as humans building the technology. And particularly when you think about people with disabilities and the fact that there's a lack of data in our community, we really, really, really need solutions that are going to increase data collection so that we can make sure that we can feed the next wave of AI technology and solutions so that they're inclusive. When they are making a hiring bot, it needs to have data from people with Down syndrome, for instance, and we need folks that are willing to collect that data. Okay, so lastly, it was really about how do you want the world to look in 5 years? I really would love, perhaps after this, in the last 30 minutes, if you all want to talk to me about some ideas that you have, I would love to be able to provide feedback. You can also reach me and I'll make sure that you have my email address, but it's heather.dowdy@microsoft.com is the easiest way to do it. And I encourage you all to apply for a grant. I'm gonna kind of skip over some other parts, which just talked a little bit more about the challenges in each of our focus areas of employment, daily life, communication, and connection. But I think we've already hit on that. I'm leaving you all with lots of resources, but I want you to really consider tinkering with Azure if you haven't done so already. Really easy to do if you just go onto the site itself and see some of the tutorials that they have. Seriously, like you can just go in there and play with it. And definitely apply. If you apply, please put in Chai A11Y so that I know that it's connected to this event and I'll be able to see it when it comes through. Reach out to us for questions. Also look at the website, look at the other things. I mean, there was so much more that I could have talked about in terms of projects, but it's really interesting what we've got going on. The next application deadline will be in November, so you got a little time to think of something. And that's pretty much it. Also, spread the word. Tell other people about this program. Maybe they're an entrepreneur or there's a startup that's looking for some funding. Please spread the word. That way we get lots and lots of great ideas circulating. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, and also thank all of our sponsors, especially Red Shelf, for hosting us tonight. Now, the aforementioned networking portion that we are going to return to begins now. We do have a half an hour and then a o'clock, we ask that everybody heads out. There's plenty of food, so if you're still hungry, please go get some food. The Red Shelf would appreciate not having to store that or to otherwise figure out what to do with it. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We can do the ideation session if you want to do it now. Yeah. Since it's like everybody's mingling. 30 minutes, yeah. Just like walk around. Okay. Sorry that like I was a little
Good memory.